Young men were just vanishing. We're talking wealthy, healthy guys, entirely disconnected from one another. They literally just evaporated. There were no ransom notes, no bodies ever discovered. When investigators went looking, all they found were undisturbed apartments. Mobile phones left casually on kitchen counters. It's like they simply ceased to exist.
Now, the official narrative for all this was deeply flawed. An investigative journalist, Sydney St. James, well, she absolutely refused to accept it. To her, every locked door had a key. So she partnered up with Sam. He's a digital forensics expert who specializes in tracking down impossible footprints. By totally bypassing standard logic, Sam managed to trace a hidden IP address. It was routed through Switzerland, sure, but physically, the signal was coming from right beneath a registered business in the dead center of the city.
Okay, let's dive into this. That physical address, it belonged to Artemis. Publicly, it was billed as the most exclusive dating app on the market. You know, a safe space where women could curate perfect matches. But when Sam bypassed their firewalls, he found the exact same server hosting something called the Vampire Web. This was a live, deeply encrypted stream where high society women were actually placing bids on the harvested data of those missing men. And forensic markers quickly confirmed the absolute worst. The imagery on that stream wasn't CGI or special effects. It was real blood.
Seeking the actual truth here, Sydney managed to secure a late-night interview with the enigmatic founder of Artemis, a woman named Anna. And sitting across from her, Sydney immediately noted this deeply unnatural stillness. Anna literally did not blink. Her voice was just dead flat as she explained that Artemis merely filtered out the unworthy. She stated with absolute, terrifying conviction that they simply curated perfection.
Keeping her voice as steady as possible, Sydney pushed back. She pressed Anna on the actual fates of these missing men, and Anna's response was delivered with just chilling detachment. She basically implied that some men are meant to build society, while others are simply meant to sustain it. The missing men, she stated, had surrendered themselves completely to the judgment of the matriarchy.
But it gets stranger. The visual evidence Sam gathered during that interview completely defied technological logic. When he went to process the photos, he found this massive anomaly. In every single digital file, Anna's face was totally pixelated and blurred by the camera's sensor. It was as if the digital realm itself was fundamentally incapable of capturing her true physical form, no matter what he tried.
Desperate for some kind of context, Sydney consulted a reclusive expert in ancient mythologies, and the revelation they uncovered was absolute. Artemis wasn't a tech company at all. They were actually tracking the sect of Anastasia. This is an ancient coven that survives by hiding in plain sight, moving across centuries. 1906 in Madrid, 1915 in St. Petersburg, and now present day, right here in the city. Their survival is dictated by some incredibly strict biological rules. They're bound by this 1,000-year cycle where their powers reach an absolute peak, literally capable of distorting digital signals and human minds. But this peak is immediately followed by something called excessium quiesce. It's a 25-year, deep, death-like hibernation. And during this sleep, they are completely paralyzed, totally, 100% vulnerable. Now, this extreme vulnerability means they desperately need a protector. Ancient lore calls this role the matriarch's shield. It has to be a human vessel of pure lineage who willingly guards their sleeping bodies for a quarter of a century. And here is the horrifying truth that was delivered to Sydney that night. The sect had chosen her.
Here's the catch, though. Ancient law dictates that they cannot take their protector by force. Sydney actually had to invite them in. So to break her will, Anastasia initiated this relentless psychological warfare. We're talking hyper-realistic trances, mental incursions, whispered promises of eternal youth and power in the dark. Sydney would literally snap awake in her bed, gasping for air, only to find fresh, bleeding scratch marks raked right across her skin.
But their timeline was finite. If Sydney held out and refused them until the final hour of the millennium, the Coven would be forced to enter hibernation completely exposed. So a creeping, heavy suspense gripped the city as that final night arrived. While Sydney was ultimately taken, Sam was rapidly tracking the fading Artemis signal, following it deep, deep below the concrete.
That signal ended in an abandoned subterranean subway terminal. Sam arrived, and he wasn't alone. He was accompanied by a heavily armed descendant of the Van Helsing lineage. Inside this massive, cavernous dark space, the Coven was already sealing themselves into these glowing pods, actively entering their long hibernation. Only Anna remained awake. And there, chained to a stone altar right in front of her, was Sydney.
Buried under this crushing, almost physical hypnotic weight, Sydney was faced with a mortal choice. Anna, standing there at the absolute zenith of her ancient power, delivered an ultimatum in the dark. Sydney had to officially agree to be their shield right then and there, or Sam was going to be executed on the cold stone floor.
Then, the assault kicked off with violent precision. Flashbang grenades detonated, completely flooding the darkness with blinding light. Van Helsing tore right through the awakening Guardians. But Anna? She immediately retaliated. With just a simple wave of her hand, a telekinetic strike threw Sam clear across the room. It completely shattered his camera, destroying all his hard evidence into useless little pieces.
Right in the middle of that sheer chaos, Anna realized a cold, hard truth. Her hypnosis was never going to secure a willing protector. Faced with the reality of entering hibernation completely exposed to her enemies, she made her choice: mutual destruction. She decided she was going to annihilate the only journalist who actually knew their secret right before the paralysis took her.
But she vastly underestimated mortal adrenaline. Sydney snapped her eyes open, physically shattering that hypnotic hold. Pulling herself free, she didn't rely on any ancient magic or lore. She just grabbed a jagged, broken wooden arrow right off the floor and drove it directly into Anna's chest. It was a violent, absolute refusal to be a pawn in their immortal game. And just like that, Anna rapidly aged to gray ash, scattering into the cold underground air.
The aftermath of all this was incredibly swift and completely clinical. The Artemis servers just vanished from the web entirely. Those missing men? They were actually discovered locked away in the upper levels of the compound, still alive. Of course, the public was fed a perfectly smoothed-over cover-up. The official story was just that a massive, elaborate tech scam had been exposed. And Sydney never published the true story. She knew full well that the supernatural reality of what happened down there would never, ever be believed.
Which really brings us to the lingering dread of the present day. Think about it. We hand over our data, our real-time locations, and our most intimate preferences to black box systems every single day. We just stare into the blue light, completely trusting an unknown algorithm with our lives. You really have to ask yourself what is actually running on those servers. Because the next time your phone lights up, that notification might just be a match, or it might be the start of a 1,000-year nightmare. Think very carefully about what you invite in.